None of the stuff is dated because we're all talking about the past anyway, so it's really not a problem. I mean, maybe some of the news items are dated, but it's still fun to listen to. But thanks for discovering us. I appreciate the nice compliments. We try to give our listeners chunks of fun facts with every bite, and we like to keep it light and fun and passionate for Van Halen, because Van Halen is like our religion, so that's what's great about it. Dave, you have anything to say?
Nope. I worship at the altar of Eddie Van Halen.
There you go. We're on to letter number 23, and Ricky Steele is saying, what's up, guys? Just wanted to drop a note. Thank you for a killer podcast. Number 52 was one for the record books. And I first saw that it was over 5 hours, and I hit play, and you guys went into the Eddie Money bit, and you totally got me. And I thought, well, they will do this Eddie Money thing for the first hour, then do Van Halen for 4. Call me gullible, but you got me. The deep dive into Greg Renoff's second book was chock full of info that was so neat to hear. I know you guys have families and a normal life, and I truly appreciate you both giving your time up for a true Van Halen fans. Keep it up, Ricky Steele. Well, Ricky, that's so nice for you to say. Yeah, the Eddie Money thing, we didn't even address that day. That was so fun, right? It was a funny thing. It was a little bit of humor there. It was a little April Fool's for you guys. A little fun fact, by the way, that little Mrs. Money bumper was Mrs. Money that I did an interview with. Eddie came out with an EP for his poor late Eddie. He did an album before he died, literally was going to release it before he died. They held it back from releasing because Eddie wasn't well, and the album was totally done. It's called Brand New Day, and they split it into 2 EPs. And the first EP was dropped last month, and they're going to do another one. But I have a full interview with Mrs. Money that we might have to do another episode of My Friends, Dave, where we have a full interview with Mrs. Money. But that little shout-out she did to Marconi, she did for me as a favor because she knows that Dave is a big fan. So that was fun to do. And yes, in regards to the podcast, you will never know how much time this takes in work. It is an immense amount. It's a lot of work, but we're happy to do it because we enjoy doing it so much. Dave, what do you have to say about the Eddie Money podcast?
I thought that was a fun little bit to do. If you listen to the podcast enough, you know that Dave and I have a special place in our hearts for Eddie Money.
That's right,
so
that's right.
That was our little tribute to him, and we needed to do something to lighten up because with all the serious news out there lately, we thought, let's just have some fun with it. So
absolutely.
There you go.
And letter number 24 comes from Jeff Szerzaneski. And he says, Dave and Dave, look up this band, 1984, a tribute to Van Halen. I saw them a few months ago, and I thought it was 1984 all over again. And I thought the kid playing the guitar would be a good interview for the podcast. His name is Stratton James. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate it, Stratton James. We will look into him and check out his band. Thank you so much for the tip. There's lots of great VH tributes out there, and now more than ever, I'm seeing more and more. Right, Dave? What do you think?
Yeah, I just hope we can go out and see some of them soon.
I know, right? It's crazy. And congratulations to my partner here, Dave. He has made it to the last letter, which is letter number 25. Brad Martell. Ta-da! Unbelievable. He's still awake and alive. And we are at letter number 25, the last letter, Dave's favorite part of the night. And he says, hey guys, Brad Van Halen 3 Martell here with letter number 3 to you. This 4-hour episode on balance is sweet nectar for the ears right now. But I am surprised you guys didn't riff on Balance's status of Van Halen's mid-90s haircut album a la Load by Metallica. Okay, maybe it was just Ed, because Mikey actually had the mullet of legendary proportions at the time. Here's something that'll make you cringe. I just saw that a vinyl version of Balance was released without Balukatherium, but keeping the other 2 instrumentals, which was absolutely criminal. My quick question to you guys is, what do you think of keeping your track listing idea by crossing over, taking out the shit instrumentals, and also adding in Humans Being? I could see that song fitting in and maybe even lifting this album up to undisputed classic status. Love always to the podcast, and take care, Brad Martell. Okay, well, Brad, yeah, we didn't discuss Eddie's haircut, that's for true. He cut his locks, he had frosted tips, and he was a little bit chunkier than normal, if you remember. Mike had a monster mullet, for sure. The vinyl with Balukatherium removed, that is just bad news. I don't want that album without Balukatherium. Wow, fuck that. That's crazy. I am all for adding humans being, but I didn't really see that being possible because it's not part of that session. It came like a year and a half after. I understand how you would say it fits because it's got that sort of vibe. But if you're going to remove anything, you know what I mean? Like, let's remove Not Enough and Can't Stop Loving You and throw on Humans Being. And I think, along with those crappy instrumentals, and I think you got one hell of an album. If you add Crossing Over, add Humans Being, remove the two crappy instrumentals, as well as Not Enough and Can't Stop Loving You, and then you got like a real solid Van Halen rock album. You could even keep Can't Stop Loving You. It's just a pop song, but I think there's some argument there. What do you think, Dave?
No, I agree with you. I think Humans Being can help any album,
Yeah,
quite frankly.
Sure.
The album certainly won't be any worse for it.
That's for sure. And we have wrapped up the mailbag segment. We are on to our discussion about the Sam and Dave tour from 2002. Dave and I get all into the details about that entire tour, how it came together, how Roth and Hagar butted heads, the press conference, the Howard Stern interview. We talk about the VH1 special. We talk about the launch of the tour. We talk about the set list. We talk about Dave and I's experience going to the tour. We talk about the aftermath of the tour, everything. Their MTV Video Music Awards appearance after that tour, the whole enchilada, followed by our interview with guitarist Brian Young, B. Young, as he is known to David Lee Roth. He was his guitarist after Bart Walsh. He was the former guitarist for the Atomic Punks, and he was in Dave's band for several years. He was even on Dave's radio station show, and he had lots of stories to tell about Roth, and that is all coming up next. Take a listen.
We are different characters, and much more different than I thought. We both were lead singers in Van Halen, and I think that's it. I never tried to put on all those kind of clothes and do all that to myself, you know? That's the difference between us. Dave's a rock star.
Everybody feeling good about yourselves? Healthy? Happy?
Yeah.
Sober? Close enough. Sing every part of everything, because that's how they paid us. It's in the contract. And stay away from the Cabo Wabo.
If you would like to send us a letter asking a question or making a statement or whatever you'd like to say, you can send it to ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com.
Hi, this is Wild Mick Brown, the drummer for Dawkins, and you're listening to Dave and Dave on Unchained.
Check out the new podcast, The Rock Quarry, your place to hear in-depth interviews with some of rock's most colorful characters, with your host, entertainment journalist David J. Criblay. The Rock Quarry is available for free on Spreaker and iTunes. You can check us out on Facebook at The Rock Quarry Podcast, on Twitter at Rock Quarry Pod, on Instagram at The Rock Quarry Podcast, or email us at therockquarrypodcast@gmail.com.
I'm the happiest guy in the world, and if you ever see me bummed out, it's because of that damn Dave did it.
Most comparisons between Hagar's reality and mine are purely coincidental. I make the joke frequently that my life and my career is a lot like Capitol Hill or your favorite Chinese restaurant. You probably don't want to see what's going on behind the scenes.
Well, Dave, it's about that time. We've been talking about doing this for years, and we have finally come to this episode. It is the one where we discuss the night you got deflowered, huh? What do you say? You want to get into it?
Oh man, I'm not prepared for that.
Okay.
One, so we'll have to talk about something else.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right. Well, we have this other thing on the side burner that we've been thinking about for many years. And it is the Sam and Dave tour, if you could believe it or not. Take us back to the summer of 2002, back when we were a ripe young age of 32 years old, Dave. Can you imagine being 32?
I'm happy to imagine anything these days. So.
That's right. That's right. Well, I tell you, let's just start off by saying this was a shock. I guess at the time, it's 2002, so let's go back to 2002, and it is a disastrous mess for Van Halen fans. So where are we at? Well, Dave has left the band. Sammy has come into the band. Sammy did well with the band. Sammy has left the band in a storm. Gary has come into the band, and Gary has left in a storm. And Van Halen is dormant. Van Halen has had nothing going on in 99, in 2000, and in 2001, and here we are in 2002, right? So at this point, it's been years since Van Halen's done anything. The last thing they did was Van Halen 3, and we all know how that turned out. So what is a Van Halen fan to do? Well, Irving Azoff, who is the mastermind of all kinds of touring and managing, came up with this concept of putting Sam and Dave together. And we're going to talk about every element of this whole thing. And Sammy Hagar touring with David Lee Roth as a co-headline bill. Now, just to start off, we're going to go through everything, how the whole thing came about and the songs, everything on the thing. So do you remember this tour, Dave? And you remember where we went to see it?
Yes, I do remember the tour. We didn't see it in New York, that was for sure. So I think we saw it in Jersey, right?
That's right. We saw it at the PNC Bank Arts Center in New Jersey. And the reason for that, and we'll get into that later, is there was a whole hubbub about them playing New York. A whole thing
about them playing in New York.
And we'll get into that later in the conversation, but that is why Dave and I traveled to New Jersey to see the show, and it was quite a hike because it was far from our houses. But anyway.
Right. Not the farthest we've ever gone to see David Lee Roth.
That's right. No, we have traveled many a state to get to see David Lee Roth. In fact, our last venture was the furthest, to Vegas. That was insane. We did that in January, back when planes actually flew, Dave.
That's right.
When man used to go into the air and travel to different states, and now we could barely get to the downtown Village Cafe, which is closed. So
right.
So I tell you, where was David Lee Roth at? Well, David Lee Roth was not exactly in a good position in his career because it's 2002. This is the last thing that he released was the DLR band album, which to us is a great album. We love the album, but it really didn't do very well business-wise. The last time he was out touring, on a big tour, I should say, he was opening for Bad Company. That's when we traveled to Pennsylvania to go see him open for Bad Company, the original Bad Company.
Right, that was around 1999, I think, right? 1999?
Yep.
I think, 99.
99.
Okay.
Where was Sam at? Well, Sam already did his big post-Van Halen run. He did the whole Marching to Mars thing, and then the whole Mas Tequila thing with his Red Voodoo album, and, things weren't all that great in Sammy land at this point. He didn't exactly, wasn't lighting up the world, I should say. There wasn't anything wrong with his career, but it just was sort of like middling. There wasn't really much going on. He was still touring and making albums, but it wasn't, he didn't have any, major cachet. David Lee Roth was more down in the dumps. Van Halen was obliterated. There was it was just like Eddie went into a coma during this period. Apparently, Eddie was having health issues. Eddie was having marriage issues. Eddie was recovering from the failure of Van Halen 3. It was a disastrous mess. But what does that mean? That means Van Halen fans were looking for some Van Halen. They haven't heard live Van Halen in years. So Irving Azoff came up with this. So apparently, the way it all turned out was originally, Sammy reached out to Dave in 1997 to do this tour. When was 97? Well, that was right after Sammy came out of Van Halen. So he broke up with Van Halen somewhere around the spring, early summer of 1996.
Father's Day of 96.
Right, there you go. That's
when he got
early summer.
That's when he got the call from Ed, right?
Right. So then 97, apparently he contacted Dave to do the tour, but Dave rejected it because he went ahead with his release of his biography, Crazy from the Heat. He was putting out a greatest hits package, the best at that time. And according to Roth, he said the timing was wrong. Now the timing was right. He said it's completely unpredictable. This is something he said at the press conference at the Sky Bar in LA on mid-April, I think it was April 16th or so. And
it was actually the day your taxes are due, which is why I remember the day.
It was April 15th, right.
It was April 15th.
Right. And
and when he says the timing was wrong, that was the best time to do the tour.
Oh, it was really...
Right, because that was after the whole hubbub that both guys got kicked out of the band.
Right. let's be honest. I think Dave felt he still had a lot more cachet at that time.
Because, it was definitely right. Yeah, no, his ego was doing the talking.
And he had just finished his Warner Brothers contract. He was gearing up the DLR band. He had just come from that big Van Halen